Hello and welcome back to the Stronghold. I'm the Magi and I could not be more excited. See, after a long summer, it is finally time for standard players to start brewing decks again. But nothing could be more taxing on a budget player's resources than the drive to build new decks. So we're going to need a plan. Today, we're going to talk about the budget deck options that are out there for us this season, the ones that we should be focused on, the ones to keep an eye on, and the ones you probably want to let pass by. But hey, before we get into all that, I wanted to take just a moment to thank my community for helping the Stronghold reach a bit of a long-term goal here. 1,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. Definitely a tremendous thing. Thank you for all the views, all the subs, all the likes, all the comments, and just generally being a very supportive community. It means so much more than you'll ever know. And hey, what do you do when you reach a goal? You set a new one. So moving forward, my main talking point goal is going to be to reach just 50 followers over on Twitch. And frankly, we're already about halfway there, so this one should be really, really easy. If you're not already following me on Twitch, please consider doing so. And that always gives you kind of a sneak peek of some of the live play content, things like that. And of course, the support continues to help the community grow. And I'll be thinking up a giveaway to do once we get there. Probably not a whole account this time around, but hey, that's okay. Now, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, right. If you've been around the channel for any length of time, I'm sure you've heard me say that it takes about 3 focused value drafts in order to construct a budget deck from its proceeds. So with limited resources, be it gold or time, that means that we are going to have a limit to how many drafts we can do, and furthermore then how many budget decks we can construct. So we want to make sure that we're focused on the very best options and not burning our resources on things that probably aren't going to work out as well as we might like. When I'm doing evaluations, I like to use what I lovingly refer to as the Eastwood rating system, breaking your choices down into 3 easy categories: the good, the bad, and the ugly. In order for a choice to get a rating of good, it's got to be above the moving average of all of the available choices. The bad, however, is actually still generally a playable option, so to speak, being within 1 standard deviation mathematically of having been a good choice. The ugly, however, is everything else that is left. It's not good. It's not even bad. These are the ugly choices that generally aren't even worth our time. Today I'm going to start at the bottom and work our way up. And when it comes to prior seasons, we've got a couple of things that we want to look at here. The first being the mono red artifacts deck built primarily from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, which makes it kind of a far reach for new players. Those cards are only going to be in standard the remainder of this year. And, well, there's a lot of potential wild cards to be spent on that. Similarly, the Defenders deck from Dominaria United is, well, about the same case. If you were around to draft that set aggressively, building that Defenders deck was very worthwhile. But now DMU is probably not one of even our top 2 choices for drafting those older sets. So this is probably one, if you haven't already built it, you probably don't want to be pursuing that all that much. From the starter deck, the red-white Rebel Armory, well, I believe in my notes I described this as a train wreck. It needs more help than we should be willing to give it. And something's got to give here as far as new cards, better synergy, something. It's just not hitting on much just yet. Similarly, mono green doesn't really have a tier deck of any sort, much less a viable budget deck. And when it comes to Wilds of Eldraine, the red-white Brawl at the Ball Cinderella deck, the blue-white Cinderella tap-down deck, the white-black Insomniac Enchantment Matters deck, as well as the white-green Beauty and the Beast deck, and the blue-green Beanstalk Ramp deck are all really missing something for us to pursue them as budget decks. Now, it certainly doesn't mean you never want to build these decks, but I would not be devoting resources like draft resources or wild cards into them. But certainly, once you have opened all your packs and you have a bunch of these cards anyway, there's no reason not to experiment around with it. I just wouldn't put a lot of time into these at this juncture. Next up is the tier 2 decks, and here we honestly only have 4. A lot of that is because we had so many that made the ugly list. These decks might be bad, but they still have potential and are worth keeping an eye on. When it comes to older decks, the white-green, I call it Britney Toxic deck, is a very solid deck, and if you have it built, you're going to continue playing that for a long time. It comes pretty much exclusively from Phyrexia All Will Be One, so if you are looking to use some extra resources on some older draft environments, that is one of the best options. Green-white has another good option in an artifacts deck, using primarily cards from the Jump In Tech list and new cards from Wilds of Eldraine. So again, if you have a little extra resources, this might be a thing to keep an eye on, and it might get better as time goes on. We've got a whole year to explore here. And of course, that brings us around to the good decks, the things that you should be working towards. And believe it or not, there is not one, but 2 tier 1 meta decks available to budget players right now. Of course, the top dog is the either mono white or blue white soldiers deck, and that comes to us primarily through the High Flying Valor starter deck this year and certain select cards from Brothers War. This is another one of those second year sets that if you have some extra resources, this might be a good thing to draft. I know we have that coming up as a draft environment very shortly, and we will be talking about it as part of an upcoming midweek Magic. Also, Mono Blue Control comes to us with a lot of help from the new player experience, Arcane Aggression, as well as a very good jump-in pack, which gives you the one rare that you need in this deck. By one, I mean one playset. Also, the starter decks brought us the white-green Growing Hope deck, and it's pretty good once you switch around some of the cards. It's not quite tier 1, but it has a lot of potential, especially in a 3-year standard environment where they say things like mechanical aspects are going to be repeated. So we could see a lot of +1 matters cards over the next year. So this is a deck to not be afraid of investing in. The last one from the new player experience is the blue-red Izzet deck, coming to us from Arcane Aggression and new, mostly adventure creature cards from Wilds of Eldraine. I have this rated 3rd overall, but I'll be honest with you guys, I tend to overrate this deck because for years I've wanted to make it work, and for years now running I have failed to do so. So choose wisely there. That might be a more daring choice. Now, when it comes to the Wilds of Eldraine archetypes that I believe are going to make good budget decks, we are talking about the black-red Rats tribal deck that is a little bit more of a sacrifice deck, I think, in its best budget form. So it will borrow heavily from the new player experience deck Scrapyard Sacrifice. Also, the blue and black Fairies tribal deck comes to us almost exclusively from Wilds of Eldraine, making it a potential premier draft choice next year. It can also borrow some utility cards from Grave Secrets to make it even better, and that's the sort of building budget synergies that we look for. And last up, we've got the black-green Candy and Crumbs deck, again, almost exclusively from Wilds of Eldraine. It does lend itself to some degree from good, strong cards from Savage Scavengers, the black-green new player experience starter deck for the year. And this one also has an added potential of possibly being a better deck in Alchemy because of food synergies, but frankly, that remains to be seen, and it may not be our premier choice for Alchemy, even if it is. On two of my accounts last season, I basically skipped a Lord of the Rings from any sort of active collection. So I have a lot of extra gold, which means I'm going to be able to buy more packs and capitalize on the golden pack returns for Wilds of Eldraine. That also means I'm going to be doing probably only about 3 quick drafts on each of these accounts. Now, on the flip side, on my newest account, of course, I don't have that luxury, so I will be doing more quick drafts there. And by all means, if you are a player that is still trying to find their place with quick drafts and you need to do a few more in order to be able to free to play your way into the Mastery Pass, don't feel bad for doing so. The way you get better at drafting is by drafting. And as we've discussed earlier, those quick drafts and value drafts are what leads you to your budget decks and then allows you to continue farming at a better rate. And before we go, I want to take just a moment to thank all of my patrons and remind the community when we hit just 10 patrons at any level, we will be rolling out Discord for the entire community, not just paid patrons. So if you have the means or mind to do so, consider supporting our community as it continues to grow. And of course, supporting the community by liking, commenting, subscribing, or sharing our videos is always appreciated.